It is my pleasure to now introduce Mr. Andrew Bishop, Lead Climate Change Negotiator with the Office of the Vice President, I believe, Department of Environment and Climate Change in Guyana. Mr. Bishop, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Your Excellency, Ambassador Karen Lynn Williams, fellow members of the panel, participants. First of all, allow me to thank USAID for putting on this event and for affording Guyana the opportunity to share its experiences, its views. At the outset, allow me to highlight very briefly some relevant features of my country. We have quite a varied geography. We have mountains that reach 10,000 feet, and we also have a very flat coastal plain that borders the Atlantic, about 240 miles of coastline. And this coastal plain is where most of our people live, has most of our infrastructure, and it lies at or below sea level. I point this out because we have a perennial challenge building and maintaining sea defenses and draining rainfall runoff and so on. I am going to follow the guidance provided in terms of what I address, and I will try to keep my presentation within 6 minutes or so. If I'm to reflect on success stories, one of our successes is not like a project that we concluded and it was a great success. It is that while Guyana has vast amounts of forests, and we have engaged in commercial forestry for decades and decades, we have managed to maintain one of the lowest deforestation rates in the world, along with Suriname and others. This was not by accident. It was by design, by policies and measures that we have taken and enforced. We have a national forest policy that promotes sustainable forest management. We are implementing measures such as sustainable yield harvesting, forest codes of practice that align with sustainability. We've developed MRV systems, reference levels. We have safeguards in place. I would like to add here also that we are actively engaged in mangrove planting and replanting along the shoreline. And we have the same issues that Rajesh just mentioned about coastal retreat, coastal degradation, and so on. I would also like to cite our low carbon development strategy as a success story. It was the first in the world. It was developed even before the Conference of the Parties in Copenhagen in 2009. And since back then, we recognized that our forests were sequestering and storing carbon and performing an environmental service so that with the right incentive, we could keep them standing to continue to perform those services. We estimated the amount of carbon we remove annually, we monetized it, and in an MOU with Norway, we generated payments for keeping deforestation rates below a certain reference level, and then we used that revenue for identified low-carbon economic activities. And these activities included benefiting forest communities as well. Just to add that we're currently revising our low-carbon strategy to include biodiversity, integrated water management, and the marine economy. May I add, Madam Moderator, that just a few weeks ago, on June 5th, World Environment Day, my president signed the Leaders' Pledge for Nature, and we also formally joined the Global Oceans Alliance in a global initiative to ramp up biodiversity protection and conservation. Now, following the guidance, let me address resilience and adaptation. I had mentioned earlier that most of our population and infrastructure are below sea level or at sea level. And this underlies our risks and our vulnerability to rising sea levels, to surges, floods, and so on. You all would have read about the floods that we're currently experiencing and Suriname as well. I'd like to point out that in 2005, we had what was seen as a 100-year flood. Here in 2021, just 16 years later, we have an even worse flood. So let's see what's happening. The impacts are intensifying, just like the IPCC predicted. We are in the process of finalizing a climate resilience strategy and action plan. Now, this plan, in addition to documenting risks and vulnerabilities, it identifies a number of areas where actions can be taken to develop resilience. Areas such as drainage and irrigation infrastructure, water conservancy management, enhancing our sea defenses, early warning systems, climate resilient agricultural systems. These are only some of the urgent areas where action needs to be taken. We spoke about research. We can consider more research and analysis and capacity building in tropical localized weather forecasting. And I use the word localized there very poignantly. Localized weather forecasting. I would drive through one village with heavy rains. 5 minutes later, I enter another village and the roads are dry and there's no rain.
Mm-hmm.
Our universities don't teach that kind of weather system. So we need research there. A final point about financing. All these initiatives I mentioned, the drainage works, the conservancy management, the forest management, all that stuff, they take a lot of money to implement. And so while we need more research, let us simultaneously allocate resources to implement actions which are ready to go and fund projects on the ground. So with that, Madam Moderator, I thank you.